Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to talk about Warhammer 3 again because I'm actually feeling optimistic. Ever since Creative Assembly's statement that they have plans for free DLCs this year, keep in mind it's just plans, things can change, I feel like the game still has a few good years left in it with forms of content. It's very clear that they do want to milk this cash cow for as much as possible and I'm hoping they do so. But with that being said, we need to look towards the possible future. A topic that I've discussed in the past is race packs. You see, when we look at the available races and possibly the races that we will be getting in the future in the form of DLC, there's quite a lot of options, but there's also a few other minor races in the Warhammer Fantasy universe which slowly but surely is getting more lore. Not only that, but we're very much expecting them to be in Warhammer the Old World. So this is stuff that wouldn't really be classified as a full race in itself, because there's just not enough space to justify, say, 4 legendary lords. But it could be done in such a way that we could end up with 2 legendary lords, a decently sized roster, say in the size of Norska, and just a few stylized mechanics to give you a different type of playstyle. Now, before anything, a lot of these races are not actually inside the realm of Chaos Map, so what's going to have to happen is Creative Assembly are going to have to make Immortal Empires free to use for anyone who owns Game 3 without owning Game 1 and Game 2. So yes, this would be Immortal Empires specific DLC, and we've spoken about this in the past. It desperately needs to happen in an effort to keep the game alive a lot longer. There's only so much that can be done with just the Realm of Chaos map. It is rather small when you start looking at it. Plus, let's be honest, a grand majority of the people watching this video, plus I'm guessing the player base in general, does not really care about the Realm of Chaos map. It's not what we wanted. We wanted just the big map because, I mean, it's kind of cool, right? Plus, Immortal Empire's specific DLC will make sure that a lot more options are presented, rather than just trying to find a way for them to shoehorn this, that, and the other inside of the game. Now, we don't know if this is going to happen or not, but it can be assumed that eventually they will do so, as even Creative Assembly know that, yeah, limitations are there. But until then, we can speculate, we can chat, and we can kind of push them in the right direction, give them the idea if they didn't have it anyway. So, what races are we talking about? Well, obviously I'm talking about Talia, Estalia, Arabi, Sertos too, in a very different way, and we'll probably discuss that in greater detail in a future video. The Amazons, the Hobgoblin Khanate. These are all races and factions established in deep history of Warhammer Fantasy, and maybe have not gotten a lot of lore, but have gotten some over the years, or they've just stayed relatively unknown for a long time. The fact is that there's a lot of potential here for future DLC if Creative Assembly is interested, and obviously if they get approval from Games Workshop, and there's very good reason to believe that we might actually get this in the future for a number of different reasons. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay by Cubicle 7 has been really updating lore for different races and factions, and it's something that is becoming quite curious. For example, we know that Estalia has a very heavy Myrmidia type of worship, and we're getting a little bit more concept on how things work around there. Very recently, Talia has also gotten a rather large lore dump where we know that they very heavily worship the gods of lore, a rather lost pantheon from a long time ago. Like, seriously, a long time ago. Hell, they were even removed from canon in the end times, saying that they never existed, yet, for some reason, have been brought back a few years later. Again, bringing more fleshed out lore to some factions that we barely know about. Warhammer the Old World is also a massive thing here, as this is the return of Warhammer Fantasy. We've already seen the announcement of 2 new playable races and factions, which did already directly affect Total War. This was Kislev and Cathay, but we've already seen some hints regarding the Hobgoblin Khanate, and it's likely that we're going to see some other stuff, as there's been a little bit of a hint regarding the heraldry of Talia, Estalia, and Arabi. They've got their own unique heraldry, and this could lead to possible armies in the future. A big thing to note also here is that many of the already established rigs that we have for Total War Warhammer, be it High Elven stuff, normal human stuff, or maybe even some stuff for the future, could also help out when it comes to these races. The baseline animations and rigs can be fully done, and then you just have to reskin a lot of these troops. I know a lot of people don't like that, but yes, humans will fight in a very similar sense to other humans, right? This is going to be something that we're expecting, as yeah, humans do fight in very similar ways. So we're going to go over all the races right now, and I'm going to explain why and how, as yeah, I feel like this is a really big thing here. And before that, I just want to say that this could also be very beneficial to Creative Assembly, as it would be a great palette cleanser. We're not expecting full race packs every year. Maybe every year and a half is something that we could get. So, you know, this would be Ind, Nippon, Koresh. These are the big races that we're all kind of waiting for, but this would have to take some time to actually get done. And between that, we'd be expecting, if we get 3 DLCs a year, which kind of seems like might be the norm, it would break up the monotony of so many Lord Packs, as Lord Packs is the most common form of DLC. Yes, we have a new form with Champions of Chaos style, I'm calling them Culture Packs, but it would be great to have a little bit more, as there's only so much that you can do. There's not that many types of big Champions of Chaos style DLCs that they can do for the different races and factions, as a lot of these races are very much done in terms of units. More units will come in, hopefully, with Warhammer the Old World, but again, having an extra form of DLC will break up the monotony. It will keep things fresh, and it'll keep the fan base very entertained. We're going to start off with the Hobgoblin Incarnate, mainly because I've actually been painting some Hobgoblin miniatures recently, which, fun fact, I have an ungodly amount of Hobgoblin musicians and banner bearers for some reason. Not so much troops, but a lot of musicians and banner bearers. Anyways, the Hobgoblin Incarnate is not actually attached to the Chaos Dwarves. They're a very separate entity. The Hobgoblin Incarnate is very much a race which does command a lot of respect up in the north, as they are quite brutal. So yeah, Northern Steppes, pretty much all of the areas right now, which is mostly chaotic waste, but you never know if stuff could be opened up or cleaned up a little bit. Warhammer Korea right now is very, very empty. You can't even actually go there, and while we do know there are some humans there, it's mostly just like half a sentence. So it's easy enough to put a character over there and then a legendary lord, say, in the Darklands. You can even give it a little story that in the future, if Chaos Dwarfs do come in, which we're assuming is the next DLC, that this Hobgoblin is taking the fight directly to the Chaos Dwarfs to rescue any potential Hobgoblins that might have been enslaved. That's 2 Hobgoblins already, and really there could just even be 1, because I wouldn't mind some races coming in, some mini races, having only 1 legendary lord, because that already gives you something completely new to play with. Now, we can already expect that the Chaos Dwarfs will have some form of Hobgoblin units. Both armies on the tabletop, this is the original army book from way back in the day, or even in the 8th edition army that you had with the Tamukon series, yeah, there were Hobgoblins there. So any new animations, any new rigs, any new things, if the Chaos Dwarfs come with a complete roster, which we're expecting so, considering that some other races, such as the Tomb Kings, had an almost complete roster, the Vampire Coast had new stuff, that means that we can already expect Hobgoblin assets to be there, which can easily be reused and reskinned if needed to make a Hobgoblin faction. We're not really expecting a lot from the Hobgoblins, a lot of skirmishing fighters, so Wolf Riders, possibly a lot of chariots, and, you know, foot troops, but nothing too out there, right? And finally, anything that could be considered completely new for the Hobgoblins could, in theory, benefit, say, for example, the Greenskins, if a new war machine comes in or whatever. Something that could be reused in a very light sense, where some of these DLCs could potentially actually just help out some other races too. Now we look towards the Amazons. This is a race that can be found within the areas of Lustria. Lustria doesn't feel too bad right now, thankfully, seeing as we have a full Lustria, not the one that we had in Mortal Empires. Now, what are the Amazons? It's a race of female warriors. This is pretty much it. They did have a lot of lore back in the day, to the standard of Warhammer Fantasy back in the day. And there were little bits of information regarding, you know, how they worked. They dealt with the lizardmen, sometimes in a very friendly way, sometimes in an aggressive way, as, yeah, they were kind of similar, where they didn't necessarily have the great plan, but they had kind of something similar, which is why We know that some Amazons wore, for example, skink pelts. Yeah, pretty grim. But this is a race that we could easily find within Lustria, having a legendary lord or two legendary lords, and they could work in a very similar way as they're attached to the actual Lizardmen faction. They'd be considered a sub-race to the Lizardmen, very similar to Champions of Chaos in a sense, where you could find them potentially in the Lizardmen section, and some Lizardmen factions would be able to recruit Amazons, but you could also play Amazons by yourself and just have Amazon armies. Again, this pushes the idea of something that could be separate but also attached to something else, and who doesn't want an army of pretty much just a bunch of pissed off warrior women? You know, you'd have access to the stuff that we already know about in lore, and we could potentially see some new lore coming out very soon, as we know that there is a big Lustria supplement which is coming out for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. This is going to help kind of flesh out the area a bit more. But what we can expect there is warrior women archers, kind of fighting in a very similar sense to the Wood Elf faction, just without all the big trees, and replacing the trees with, you know, panthers, jaguars, stuff that you can find inside of a jungle, potentially with also some dinosaurs, but just a little bit just to kind of flesh out the roster a bit. So since the fighting would be very similar to Wood Elves, they could probably use that same animation and rigging, just, you know, shrunk down a little bit to be more human-sized. We're moving on to Talia now, and this is a big one, as only very recently did Talia get a massive lore dump, which kinda just added a little bit more context to the country in itself, especially when it comes to a religious sense. This is from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and it's something that a lot of people don't really take too much into account, as anything that happens there has to be approved by Games Workshop. So this is new lore. This is completely new lore. And the fact that the gods of lore are back, well, that's a massive thing in general, which we've already spoken about in the channel. Now, this is a human nation mostly known for its mercenaries and its technology. It's something that we know because, you know, the steam tank was created by a Talian. But we know for a fact that there's other stuff like the Birdmen of Katraza, and a few other things that have been described in lore very briefly, but never really given a full illustration, a full description, or even a miniature. The fact is that yes, Talia back in the day was in-game. This is of course Warhammer Fantasy in the form of the Dogs of War, but the Dogs of War added in a different amount of cultures altogether, but never really fleshed them out properly. It's only very recently where we're starting to get more and more lore. Mind you, we did have a lot of lore back in the day, which did separate them, but it was never really concrete. But most people start hypothesizing that Talia is going to have more of a steampunky vibe. It's going to be Renaissance / steampunk, which makes a lot of sense. The fact is that they also had some new heraldry pop up, which many people have linked up to Talia itself. This was in the Borderlands post for Warhammer the Old World, which has been making people think maybe we're going to see a proper Talian army. The fact that more lore is coming out already, and, well, these were all areas which we know for a fact that Games Workshop wanted to flesh out long ago, but never got the chance to for various reasons. I'm not even counting the end times here, it's just how Games Workshop worked, where they had loads of plans but never really got down to doing them. It's very possible that we could see a steampunk renaissance type of army being brought in and eventually turned into miniatures / DLC. In terms of start positions or even legendary lords, again, 2 is fine because you could have 1 easily in Talia itself because, you know, it's Talia, that's their country, and then 1 in the territories of Ind just as a trader / mercenary. As we know, those areas are going to open up eventually, and the idea is, you know, having some variety in case variety is actually needed. Now, before we jump into the other Dogs of War races, we do need to talk about the Dogs of War. I know a lot of people would be saying, well, just do a Dogs of War army and that's it. That brings in Talia, Talia, and Arabi, but it wouldn't really work. You don't call a Spaniard an Italian and you don't call an Italian a Spaniard, right? Completely different cultures, completely different people. Yes, some similarities, because obviously geographically and so on, but the same thing would work in Total War Warhammer. I do believe that a Dogs of War DLC could work, and in fact, I do feel like we could get a Dogs of War DLC and then start implementing Talia, Estalia, and Arabi through its own expansion-style DLC, just smaller mini race packs, but it can't be just, yeah, Dogs of War and that's it. It would just kill off the fantasy of these other different cultures. Plus, it would be just cooler if we had all these different mini races involved and just playing around, as it would flesh out the world more. No more Empire clones and just a lot more diversity, so you can have more choices to play. The extremely fun thing about this game is there's so much choice already, and imagine if we had more. You'd be spoiled for choice. If it's the fact that you could log onto the game and then go, well, I don't know who to play, but there's so many, I could just use a random generator just to decide, it kind of adds to a lot of fun here. Talia again is another faction which has definitely gotten a lot of lore updates over the future. We know there's a heavy focus on Mamidia, but some other stuff remains the same. You know, the whole inquisitorial stuff. We know that they've got a lot of New World colonies, because that's something that did happen too. The fact is that we do have a lot of possibilities there, and yeah, you know, it's just going into Spain but turning it fantasy, which there's already been a lot of fan concepts about, and to be honest, it's all kind of what you expect. While Talia would focus on steampunk mechanical stuff, the Estalians would be a bit more traditional, but use possibly a lot more monsters, you know, bull riders and stuff, because that's always really cool. There would of course be some sort of similarities with the Empire, but that will happen with any human faction. I mean, you can already see some similarities between the Empire and Cafe with the most basic standard stuff, because, again, humans, very much the same. Doesn't matter where they're from, they're still human, so yeah, similarities will be there, but there'll be small stuff just to kind of just change them around a little bit. Again, with start position, one in Estalia and one in the New World colonies if needed. But already, we've got a nice amount of the world fleshed out to be very, very different. And again, this is something important, because instead of getting so many Lord packs constantly, there's a little bit more to look forward to if a mini race pack comes out. And I feel like this is really, really important. Arabi's a nation which really should have been a DLC a long time ago. They should have been a DLC in Warhammer 2, but Creative Assembly ended up coming up with a statement saying that they had no plans for Arabi. Yet, over the years, we've had more information regarding Arabi. Some stuff has changed when it comes to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, some new lore, some rewriting of old lore. In general, they have been getting some updates. Now, Creative Assembly said that they had no plans at that very moment, and that could easily change because, well, new heraldry once again. Like Estalia and like Talia, they did get new heraldry in the Border Prince post. Not only that, but did you know that Arabi actually had an army back in the day in Warmaster, which was like the 10mm version of Warhammer Fantasy Battle? But yes, they had a fully fleshed out army, which could easily be used. The fact is that it's very easy to do an Arabi force with everything that's already been provided. Some people say that some stuff is a little bit problematic in lore, but those are people who look at the very old lore and not the newer stuff. Yes, all the stuff that was actually problematic was updated many years ago, like the grand majority of Warhammer Fantasy Battle lore that was actually problematic. This would be an army of skirmish fighters, as we've seen in the lore, you know, loads of really fast horses. There's even some lore to say that some of the horses in Arabi are even faster than the ones that the High Elves use, which is actually quite a feat. Then we get some pretty cool stuff like obviously Jinn, which we know still remain in Warhammer Fantasy lore as Ifrits, obviously elephant riders because elephants are freaking awesome, you know, gunpowder units are going to be a big thing, Jezzails and stuff like that, which we have in a lot of factions, but hey, a lot of stuff is going to cross over, and then obviously some pretty good footman, you know, magic is going to be a thing, possibly a new lore of magic. There's just so much that could be done. 2 legendary lords also, one in Arabi, because it could make a lot of sense there, as there is a one city province which just kind of really annoys me to see in Arabi. It's the desert itself. And, like, if it's only one city, it's because there's probably some plans. And then, you know, another legendary lord near Lustria, for example, as we know that the Grand Magus was around that area. There's already enough to go by, and yeah, I honestly really want this. Again, Creative Assembly said that there's no plans, but Creative Assembly do go back on their words a few times. You might remember that they did also say that there was going to be a northern expansion for Three Kingdoms, and we know how that went, or just certain other things. But I believe that if Games Workshop want it, and it's very likely that we're going to have an Arabi army for Warhammer the Old World, well, it's easy cross-promotion, it's easy sales, And really, this is the race, this is the human race that I really want the most. I know a lot of people want Ind, a lot of people want Nippon, and I do think that we're going to get those, but I really want Arabi. They are fairly important in the lore, and it's a shame that they've not been represented just yet. Sertos is a very big thing to talk about because I don't know why they did this, but when the Vampire Coast came out, yeah, Aranessa, who shouldn't really be there with the Vampire Coast faction anyway, as she's not a vampire, or undead for that matter, she took over Sertosa. Which is a massive shame considering how much we know about Sartosan lore. We could have had a proper living vampire faction alongside the Vampire Coast. I'm hoping that in the future they will actually see this and go, yeah, this is something that we need to do, because it's a shame. Pirates are so well known in the Warhammer lore because obviously, you know, the seas are very dangerous and pirates will raid a lot. It's a very common theme. It's a massive shame that we didn't just get like Jago Roth and possibly had Aranessa as a legendary hero, if anything, just to have a one legendary lord faction and a bit of units from everywhere, just reskinned a little bit, which is actually what kind of happened with the Sartosan thing. A lot of people got mad about it, but it kind of made sense. You could have the same mechanics in form of pseudo-horde and all that type of stuff, so it would literally be almost like a carbon copy of the Vampire Coast, but with some new stuff and obviously just living units rather than undead, but it would add in a little bit of fun, and I think that that's a real missed opportunity there. If I can be perfectly honest, I really dislike seeing Aranessa as the Vampire Coast. I really dislike that Sertosa is not its own thing. Like, that thing specifically is one of the things I hate the most about this game. Most of my things are very positive. I love this game, I really, really do. But that thing in specific is just one of the things I really, really dislike. Really, there's only two things that I dislike about this game, which is the Aranessa thing with Sertosa and Daniel existing, because it really just goes against a lot of lore, having a demon prince of Undivided, essentially. Hell, it could even be paired with Marinberg to have a few unique stuff and more pirate-themed stuff, because obviously, you know, the landship. As it's very weird, but Marinberg did originally at one point have its own culture setting in the game files, and many people thought that maybe there was some plan for a mini race pack DLC, which would have been one legendary lord. And this is kind of where the idea comes from, essentially, because why would they have their own culture setting? Yes, it helps with diplomacy because you wouldn't be able to confederate with them with the Empire and so on, but it feels like they might have had another plan. Hell, we even have some stuff which is specific to them in game files. It's not a lot, it's basically just, you know, assets for world building stuff. That's really just it. But yeah, if they want to do a proper pirate theme faction, well, nautical theme, just give it to Sertosa, give it to Marinberg, which is another nation of Warhammer which does use dwarves and high elves and so on, very much like Sertosa, and pair them up together. That's two start positions, that's two different areas. The last thing that we can talk about is the Halflings, because I know if I don't mention them, I'm going to get sorted in the comments. Halflings are a member of the Empire. Yes, they actually belong to the Empire, or at least the very grand majority of them, and this could be easily done in the future as a mini race pack too, where you would pick to play the Halflings by going into the Empire section, right? And in a very similar sense to, say, for example, the Champions of Chaos, you could then pick to play the Halfling, where you'd have the Halfling army, and this is something that you'd have some extra units only exclusive to them, or if you play as the Empire faction, you'll be able to unlock Halfling units through, say, you know, diplomacy, or just controlling the moot, right? It's that simple. But yeah, I know a lot of people do want the Halflings, and it's something that I would love to see too, as it would flesh out the world. Yes, only one legendary lord would be needed here, and a bunch of Halfling units, which you'd get a bunch of them as base, and then reskin the others, use the same rig, and there you go, you'd have some variety, but it would definitely make the world feel more alive. This is something that is needed here, even if it's going to be a race that's barely going to last. It would just be cool to see, and people would play them anyway because you could do Halfling Oni runs and do some cool challenges, some fun runs. In general, you could recruit them with the Empire, which, you know, since it falls with the Empire DLC, it would be kind of popular anyway because Empire is so popular. And since all these races and factions would only need maybe 1 or 2 legendary lords depending on who you're actually playing, and you'd likely have a smaller roster, say more or less around the style of Nulska, but what you would have is all the lord choices already, right? All the possible winds of magic that you could have access to, all the possible melee lords, support lords and stuff, since I imagine that the budget itself would not be so heavily focused on 4 legendary lords with 4 faction mechanics, 4 different ways on how to play, 4 voice actors, prolific voice actors or whatever that would needed to be doing a lot more dialogue. This would be a lot smaller, it'd be a lot more compact, and it would make for great DLCs. But with all that being said, what do you guys think? I'm just wanting to do this video just to hammer it in, put the idea into Creative Assembly's head, as I feel like this is something that could keep the game going a lot longer. I want to see this game last as long as possible. I want to see loads of content coming in for the game, because I feel like this is something that could easily make Creative Assembly money and could easily keep us entertained. I've got, what, a decent amount of hours in Warhammer 3, and I want to have a lot more. I want to be able to be spot for choice. I want to just play as much as possible. Now that I'm feeling a lot more optimistic about it, I am going back to Warhammer 3, but I want more content. I've already played loads and loads of content already from Warhammer 1 going all the way to Game 3. New stuff is always going to be the stuff that brings the players back. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a bit of discussion, and I shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.